All right, I think we are ready. So in that case, I will pass it over to my colleague, Martin. Martin, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. Should I do, yeah, let me share my screen. Should I do the introductions as well? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, you should be able to see my screen. So yeah, we're going to talk about Retraction Watch metadata. I'm going to give an overview of Retraction Watch metadata, where it comes from, how you can access it, and then we're going to hear from Guillaume Cabanac about how he's been applying the Retraction Watch metadata to some of the work that he's been doing around research integrity. Yeah, so yeah, Luis is kind of driving in the background, has put all this together. Thanks to him for a lot of the work in kind of preparation for this. And thanks to Guillaume as well for joining us today. Really looking forward to hearing from him in a few minutes. Before that, unfortunately, you need to carry on listening to me, and I'm going to maybe take you right back to the start of, what is a retraction, and why we're working together with Retraction Watch. So in the normal scheme of things, this happens thousands of times a day. Someone publishes something somewhere, they are a member of Crossref, and they send the metadata to us, and it gets into our database. Now, occasionally it happens that for whatever reason, sometime after publication, this item is retracted and it's no longer considered part of the published corpus of research. And the publisher puts this on their website. Typically, they publish a retraction notice in most cases. And what should happen is that the information about the retraction is sent to Crossref. But I've kind of indicated with a dotted line here that this is a kind of leaky pipeline. Not all of the metadata about retractions is sent to Crossref. And this is usually not because of the publishers are trying to hide the fact that they have retractions. I think that's normally not the case, as most publishers these days are very aware of the need to be transparent around research integrity. But the main reasons that we've found from talking to our community is firstly that systems are meant to do this. They're not built to do this. They're not built to update metadata after things have been published, and in particular to post retractions. And so there's a technology aspect to this. Another issue is around processes at publishers. So if, like the vast majority of Crossref members, you're publishing a low number of papers, perhaps maybe less than 100 papers per year, then you may get a retraction every 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You may never have seen a retraction. And so when it does happen, you haven't got the institutional knowledge and processes in place, and you need to contact the authors, you need to investigate, you may need to contact the authors' institutions, you need to talk to your editorial board, you need to write the retraction, get approval for that, maybe look at, talk to organizations like COPE for advice. And in all of this, while you're doing this, you may just simply forget that the metadata needs to be updated at Crossref, or it may not be clear whose responsibility that is, because some of it rests with the editorial side, maybe some of it with the production side. And so the impact of this is that the metadata community that we have who use our metadata, they don't find out about the retractions because it's been retracted on the publisher website. It's not in the Crossref database, and so the metadata users we have downstream don't find out about the retraction. And so this is where Retraction Watch comes in. So Retraction Watch started out a number of years ago now by a couple of journalists, Adam Marcus and Ivan Aransky, who started reporting on retractions and highlighting, especially where retractions were maybe not being reported accurately. And they also started to, a few years ago, started to collect retractions and have a database. And to fund this, they charged a small fee for anyone who wanted to access the full database of retractions. Around 18 months ago, Crossref signed an agreement with Retraction Watch to open the retraction database. And this is really a benefit to us because it means that we have much more information about retractions. And it's a benefit to Retraction Watch because they also want the information that they've gathered to be open, available, and useful to the community. And so just to talk about where the data comes from, on the Crossref side here, we have just one bullet point. If a member doesn't tell us about a retraction, then we don't know about that retraction. We're not going out looking for them or scraping websites or PDFs to find out about retractions. On the other hand, Retraction Watch have a lot of expertise and processes that we don't have to go out and actively look for retractions. So they're searching scholarly databases, they're checking publisher websites, they're doing web searches on in various places and receiving reports directly from the community. And each of the potential retractions that they find from those sources is checked by a human person. They investigate the reason that the retraction took place. They look at the authors and their institutions. And of course, they, in some cases, they post blogs about them. And all of this information is gathered into the Retraction Watch retraction database. So this means that we can kind of fix this leaky pipeline, we hope, to a very large extent. And the publication may get retracted by the member, the Crossref member, and then Retraction Watch will pick this up, and that's another way that we can find out about the retraction if the member hasn't told us. And that means that the metadata user community also knows about the retraction and can take whatever action they feel is appropriate. I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about how to register retractions, because you may be in the place of the members that I talked about earlier who perhaps aren't used to doing this and you don't know how to register a retraction. This is XML, which is how the majority of our metadata is deposited. And if you're using XML, you can add this section to a retraction notice metadata file. So it's within Crossmark, the Crossmark section. I want to emphasize that Crossmark is a service that we run. You do not need to be a signed up, paid up, fully using member of Crossmark to deposit a retraction. Anyone can register a retraction. And you can see we have the type here, which is retraction, and we have the DOI of the retracted work. And we can make the slides available if you want to kind of investigate this example more fully. If it's the case that maybe you can't edit your processes to add that into the XML, or you're not depositing directly with XML, then you can use one of our helper tools, for example, the web deposit form, which has this add crossmark metadata section. If you click this button, then it opens these options. And again, you just need to add the update type and the DOI and the date that it was updated. And you can do that as a manual process, which might be the easiest way to do it kind of outside of the normal automated process if you don't have visibility and access for doing that. So next I want to talk a little bit about how to access retractions, and there are really two main ways that this can be done, either downloading the Retraction Watch database as a CSV file, or the newest way that we have, which is through our REST API. So the Retraction Watch CSV file is available to download from GitLab. If you're used to using Git, then this means that you can just run a single command, git update, and that will that will update to the latest version of the file, or you can go to this website and just click on the file and download it. It's around something like 50 or 60 megabytes. It's not a huge file. So why might you want to use the CSV data? Well, it has all of the Retraction Watch retractions in one place. It includes all of the additional information that Retraction Watch collected, especially the reasons for retraction and links to the blog posts that they might have. Also things like PubMed IDs, author affiliations and institutions and countries and so on. It's also relatively human readable. You can open this as a spreadsheet and play around with it and look at it. It's maybe a great way just to get started with the data. There's a few cons to using this method. Firstly, the Crossref metadata is not included. It's only the information from Retraction Watch, although the Retraction Watch corpus of retractions is larger than the Crossref one, so you're probably not missing a great deal. What you might be missing is the very latest retractions. So because there's a human curation process with Retraction Watch, there's sometimes a delay. So it may be several weeks before a retraction crops up in the Retraction Watch database, whereas the member will send us the retraction notice immediately. It may contain information that you don't need, depending on your application. And it's all the data, but it is all of the data. So filtering, if you want to filter for it or search for certain properties of retractions, you need to do that yourself after downloading the CSV file. It's something which is a little bit easier to do in the REST API. So talking of the REST API, you can make this kind of query, which will give you all of the retraction notices that we have. And you will get back a response in JSON format, which is a typical response format for REST APIs. It's quite widely used, and you can see here there's a field that says updated by, and then it has a list. So it has a kind of 0th element and a first element in the list. And if we look at the 0th one, we can see that it has a type of retraction, and it has a source, which is the publisher. So in this case, it's the Crossref member, the publisher, who has sent us information about the retraction. And then you can see the DOI of the retracted item. If we look at the first element in the list, we can also see that the type here is a retraction. And when we look at the source, we see that it's Retraction Watch. And actually, in this case, it's the same retraction that's been detected by Retraction Watch as has been sent by the member. So this member is doing a great job. Retraction Watch also doing their job. So why might you want to use the REST API as opposed to the CSV file? Well, firstly, you can get just the latest retractions. You can use time filters to pick up retractions within a certain time frame, and I'll show you how to do that in a few minutes. Second, it's machine readable. JSON is a great format for doing computational things with the metadata after you've obtained it. There's easy filtering. I'll show a few examples in a moment. It's also the Retraction Watch retractions plus the Crossref member deposited retractions plus the rest of the Crossref metadata. So you have all of the information that we know about our work, which includes the bibliographic information, the journal title, abstract, funding information as well, and so on and so forth. You can also compare what the publisher and Retraction Watch say, because you have both of those together. There's a few cons as well. It's possible, but it's a little bit more work to get all of the data because you need to make a number of queries to the REST API to do that. And also, as we saw in the example above, retractions are maybe listed more than once if we have them from the two different sources. This is deliberate because we believe that's more transparent to show where the metadata comes from. But if you're simply counting retractions, you may need to kind of deduplicate the results that you're getting. And as I said, it kind of is all of the Crossref metadata. That may also be too much information for you, depending on the application that you're using the data for. So I just want to show a few examples of filters that you might want to use on the REST API. I've highlighted the filter names in orange here, hopefully to make it more easy to read. If you go to just api.crossref.org, you'll see the documentation, Swagger documentation for our API, which includes all of the filters. These are just a few examples that I think are relevant. We recommend you use a mail to parameter just so we can contact you if there is a problem with your querying, especially if you're doing very high volumes of querying. So if you add kind of onto the end of this filter equals and then update type retraction, and then we have a from pub date and until pub date. So this will get you all of the retraction notices that were published in 2023. So it's a kind of a time filter. Or if you want just all of the updates, including corrections, erratums, expressions of concern, and so on, you can use is update instead of update type. If you're interested in retractions from a specific country or region or territory, you can use, again, update type is retraction, and then query.affiliation equals Switzerland, for example. We have a number of query parameters that you can use, and that's in the documentation, but this is just one that people often seem to be interested in with retractions. You can also search by keywords. Again, update type is retraction, and then query.title equals COVID. This will give you any retraction notices with COVID in the title. If you want to find the works that have been retracted, then you can use this has update filter, and again, query.title equals COVID. This will give you anything with an update, so it will also give you corrections or so on, and so on. We don't have a filter that allows you to directly get things that have been retracted. But what you can do is just retrieve all of the updates and then filter for those which have a retraction in them. Just want to finish with a couple of recent updates to our schema that I think this audience might be interested in. So the first is a version field. So we have you can put the name of the version and the description of the version. So why a supplementary version or a further version of an article or a preprint or something was necessary. I think this is especially useful for preprints, but articles and other items get updated as well, books, for example. And then more specific to preprints, because when the preprint is retracted, normally the term used is withdrawn or removed. Then there isn't a separate published retraction notice that goes alongside it. And so we've introduced a field called status, which can have a status type of withdrawn, and again, a description about why the preprint has been withdrawn. So that's something to look out for. We've only released this really in the past couple of months. There's a recent blog post from my colleague, Patricia Feeney, describing the changes that we've made. So this is something that we're hoping preprint servers will start to use in the very near future. So with that, I'll say many thanks for your attention. I'll stop sharing, and I think I can hand over to Guillaume to talk through his use of Retraction Watch.
Hello, everyone. All right, I'm all set. Is it working?
Yeah, all good.
Excellent. Thank you. So thank you for this invitation to tell you about my use of the Crossref/Retraction Watch data. I built a tool called the Problematic Paper Screener, which is a free online website that helps to decontaminate the scientific literature, meaning that it includes a dozen detectors that try to find those papers that should be corrected or even retracted. And today I will focus on one of them, the feet of clay detector. The use of this detector enables one to identify those papers that cite at least one problematic paper, problematic being retracted. And the idea is to stop unreliable results from propagating through the literature. So this is the problematic paper screener. You have the public link here. The various detectors are listed on the left-hand side. And I will show you some of the things that we can do with the problematic paper screener that uses the retractions that are to be found on Crossref. That will be the case of the annulled detector. I will tell you more about this terminology. You might know about the tortured papers and tortured phrases. I will say a few words about that. And we'll focus on this detector, the feet of clay, the detector that enables publishers, readers to find those papers citing retracted references. I want to thank the various sources that fuel the problematic paper screener, Crossref, of course, and the Crossref API that allows the PPS, problematic paper screener, to identify most of the retractions. Dimensions, we use their data for the metadata that we screen daily for tortured phrases in particular, and also PubMed and PubPeer. And we will see a lot of PubPeer screenshots when we report problems to the community. So first we will go to the tortured detector, and then we'll move to the annulled and feet of clay. Tortured papers, you might have heard of them. They are published in not the predatory journals, but the journals of the elite, of the publishing industry, with things like lactose bigotry, for instance, instead of lactose intolerance, or invulnerable framework instead of immune system. If you don't believe me, and perhaps you shouldn't, just go to Google Scholar and type in vulnerable framework using quotes, and you will see the many papers that have been published and sometimes sold by the publishers with these types of tortured phrases in the papers. These results from an attempt to disguise plagiarism, because we were able to retro-engineer these expressions and find the source text that was used, copied, spinned with synonyms for the words, and then pasted and submitted, and the papers were accepted. So back in 2021, we identified papers produced by computer generation. Many detectors, many generators were used, like cite-gen or math-gen, and also the spinners that change words using synonyms and create the tortured papers. We designed and built the PPS at that time in 2021, when it was clear that it was useful to identify problems in the literature and get the literature corrected. Perhaps you saw that wagons of retractions, like 350 papers at once at IOPP, were retracted due to tortured papers, or here 400 papers at Elsevier. And this is back to 2021. Nowadays, in 2025, this is even bigger. We have batches of retracted papers that can go up until 600 at a time, or 800. And sadly, these papers were accepted by the elite of the publishers the haute couture of them. To be blamed, part of the offenders are the paper mills, and this is not a new concept. You can go to this Science paper in 2013 or to this Nature paper. The battle against paper mills is still ongoing. So we are still fighting against these companies that sell papers that are produced sometimes en masse and containing tortured phrases or other irregularities. The problem with paper mills is that they sell papers and they also sell citations. So you will end up finding problematic papers produced by paper mills that are cited by other papers. And that's when we realized that it was important to find those problematic papers and also to navigate the citation links in order to sometimes reassess the citing papers. As you can see here, due to Hindawi that retracted 8,000 of these retracted papers in 2023, retractions are on the rise. And when the journalist asked me to check if these papers had been cited, well, it was the case already. And it is going on and on. Even the retracted papers are still getting citations. So that's why we designed this fit of clay detector in order to start from retracted papers. This is the source. So the data from Crossref is really key here. So retracted papers, and we navigate the citation links using the data coming from dimensions that indexes the literature and also citation links. Then we wonder, what do we do with these papers that sometimes cite more than a dozen of retracted papers? And of course, you need to do this work regularly because retractions are issued by publishers like every day. So cataloging retractions is really important. And this is what the Crossref API gives when you ask for the values of the type update of the field update type. The PPS uses retractions, withdrawals, and removals. So these are three terms that are used by publishers to tag the papers that we shouldn't believe in anymore. So the paper can be retracted, withdrawn, or removed. When I realized that, and I was building the fit of clay detector, I said that we need a single word to refer to these three types, and this word that I used is annulled. So these annulled papers can be retracted or withdrawn or removed. Here you can see what the Crossref API gives when you ask for updates for a given paper. You can see the DOI of the retracted article and the retraction notice. And this is what the PPS does with Crossref. When it queries Crossref, it gets these data and then it formats it in order to show tables to humans that can analyze the results and take decisions. A caveat here, some publishers apparently do not update Crossref as it is mandated. So for instance, for member 263, it's IEEE, we can only find 3 retractions and 3 corrections, although they retract and correct much more than that. That's why for the PPS, I needed to use the Crossref data that is pushed by publishers, and also the Retraction Watch database, and also some data coming from the publishers via web scraping, sorry. So this is all documented here. So the various sources that we use, Crossref records, Retraction Watch database, PubMed records as well, because you can query PubMed with as retraction in. And it turns out that I'm finding retractions on PubMed that are unknown to Crossref and that are unknown to the Retraction Watch database. And also some retractions in IEEE that are available only by scraping their own websites using these filters, notice of retraction, removal, violation, or retracted. So merging all these data coming from various sources, we reach 69,000 retractions. And this is what you can get from the PPS. You can search here if you are interested in a certain publisher, for instance, or you can sort the columns by decreasing citations, or here I sorted by decreasing decision. The decision is the date on the retraction notice. And you see here that Elsevier is announcing a decision to come in 2099. So this is, of course, a bug, an error from the publisher that I posted on PubPeer in order for them to correct that. But otherwise, you can find here in November 2025, Wolters Kluwer will do something about this paper, for instance. So this is the first detector, the first brick of the process. First, we need to find the annulled papers, which are withdrawn, retracted, or removed. Then we will need to follow the citation links. But first, I wanted to stress here that when you filter and you ask for this graph about the years of annulment, so the date that is written on the retraction notice, here we got useful information with dates, and there are some unknown dates. These are when I need to go to PubMed in order to find the retraction notices or to IEEE. And I didn't run the extra mile that consists in extracting the date of the retraction notice. This is something that I need to do, but also it helps me to find those retraction notices that are not yet in Retraction Watch or on Crossref. So now that we have these papers that are annulled, we will follow the citation links and wonder about the fate of these papers that cite some references that are unreliable now. This is what it is, a retraction. The references are unreliable. So you can go to the fit of clay detector here in this tab and look at the results that appear in the table. I have some screenshots for you today. So first of all, the false positive. It is really important to stress that because it's an automated process, right? You go from a retracted paper to the citing papers. What if some people in the world, some scientists, wonder about the concept of retraction? What if they do some meta research on retraction? Perhaps they will end up citing some retracted papers. And that's what's happening here in these 4 cases. For instance, look at this title, Incredibly Nice. It's about some reported data published in a journal, and that cites some retractions. Well, this is a criticism of the work by Fuji et al. That cites papers that were retracted or that went retracted after this publication in the year 2000. Or you have here some advice. Look before you quote, and in the text, the authors are citing some retracted papers. So be aware that some articles can cite retracted papers for a reason, saying this is retracted and I'm criticizing it, or there have been some retractions in the past and we will study the impact of these retractions. So meta scientists can cite retracted papers that way. And some of our papers did that. But now the other cases, not the false positives, but the cases that raise problems. So for instance, here there is a paper about cancer in children, and on the PPS we can see that there are 69 retracted references in this article, and also that there are some peer comments already. You can see there is my name and the authors and some other commenters. So on the PPS Feet of Clay, you will find these type of reports. A line is a paper, and here you have the retracted references that appear in the bibliography. So what's happening here for this review, published by Springer and sold about 40 euros? Well, I'm using social media to ping the publishers and raise awareness about this problem, putting screenshots of the peer comments that I post. For instance, here, and it was 2023, 51 references were already retracted in the review. And what I suggest to the authors is that they check again. Now that they know that in the bibliography there are so many retracted references, please check again and make sure that the conclusions are still valid, for instance. And then you have on PubPeer some answers from the authors saying that they cited more than 600 references and they don't understand these accusations. Well, here I'm not making any accusations. These are facts. In the review, there are some references that are now retracted, and I just wonder as a reader if this review is still accurate and if I can still base my research on this, if I can still, as a physician, make decisions regarding this work, for instance. Later in 2024, the publisher issued an editorial expression of concern saying that the reference list includes many retracted papers. So reader, be aware that this work was perhaps okay when it was published, but things evolve and now some references are retracted. Another example, in a monograph sold 120 euros about, that contains 34.5 in 2023, perhaps more now, 35 retracted references. And a Springer representative contacted the author, and the author said, well, I checked and it's all clear. So now this book is still online and sold at the publishers. And it's a pity that this text that I received as a personal communication through email is not shown on the website of the publisher, saying, well, there was an expression of concern, but the author said there is no concern at all. Another example, published in Frontiers in Oncology, the very first day the paper was published, 6% of the bibliography contained retracted references. And then a colleague, Jagmir Öztürk, dug into the paper in order to understand what happened. And most of the references appeared in tables without any context, without anything written by the authors, only big tables containing retracted references. You can see the discussion and the development of this inquiry at this link on PubPeer. There are some very strange cases, like here, in a Hindawi paper, the publisher has in the PDF the word withdrawn as the beginning of the title of this reference. So this should be avoided. I'm making a plea to publishers. So please check the references before the paper is published. And with the PPS, you can do that. But also internally, the publishers can do that, of course. Some feedback from the authors. So this is the type of replies that we receive. Our conclusions and findings remain robust. And this is what we need to know. This is what we need to make sure about. So, despite the 5 retracted references and 1 question on paper, the authors think that it is still reliable. This is a contrasted answer where the author here says, well, thank you for letting us know on paper. And when we reviewed our bibliography, we saw that other articles cited are suspect and they need to be removed. And this is what it is when we talk about correcting the scientific record. And it has to be done regularly because retractions and corrections happen every day. Another feedback, the comment on paper triggered a careful review of the relevant literature. And here they need to contact the editorial board and remove some literature that is found to be unreliable. So this is important for the scientific community to maintain, to curate the catalogs that are hosted at the publishers. And this is one example of this activity. Or a final one, we were unaware of these references that we used in the past are now retracted. So thank you for telling us, that's what they say. And then they go to the list of the retracted references and they explain why it's not a problem. Their conclusions are not affected, as they say. And later they ask how to make sure not to cite retracted papers again when we prepare our papers. And there are some tools that can help. You can use the Papier browser and Zotero extensions, for instance. And it has to be taught to, well, everyone producing science should check the references on the day the manuscript goes to the reviewers. So this was the reaction of the authors. Now reactions of some publishers. Some of them, they react, and for Sage, for instance, they retracted. Retracted not a few drops for this journal, but 1,500 papers were retracted. And when they published the list of the retracted papers, they explained what they used internally to decide which papers should be retracted. Some of them, they contained tortured phrases, as you can see. Others were citing now retracted references. And sometimes these cited references are papers that were produced by paper mills. So this is the typical retraction notice that we all want to see, explaining clearly what happened and what were the criteria to judge for the retractions, and that also list the retracted articles. As you can see, these cases are very timely. That happened a few weeks ago. Publishers, they react and they correct. So we argue, we claim that it's important for a publisher to make sure that the catalog is pristine, without mistakes, without errors. So as an idealist, I would like the publishers to have a list of all the references their authors used one day. And whenever one of these references get retracted, a process is triggered to check what are the papers that we published that are citing this now retracted reference. And we need to warn the authors. We need to ask them to check if their conclusions are now not sound. So this is what I would like the publishers to do. And the JAMA network, they started doing that after we published in JAMA Internal Medicine a study of the consequences of retractions for the meta-analysis. As you can see here, they published an editorial and also commented on their action. They went to their catalog and identified 3 articles that were citing retracted references and asked the authors to rerun the calculations and redo some analysis. And for these papers, they also published correction saying that, well, this article was corrected. The meta-analysis was published before one of the included studies was retracted. A reanalysis without that study does not affect the reported results. And this is really important to have this indication for the future readers. Otherwise, you will end up with some meta-analysis that were published and that were never updated and that can still be used by readers of today and by readers of the future. So this is what we would like the publishers to do, to monitor the references cited in their articles and act. So this is my final slide. I presented this talk about how to stop errors from spreading. So Retraction Watch are doing a great job identifying the retractions. So please continue releasing these retraction data, and also please Crossref continue including them in your metadata. To readers, I want to tell them, well, gain awareness. Make sure that when you read a paper, the references that are cited, some of them might be retracted now. And you can use some tools like in the PPS, the fit of clay detector, in order to identify those references in the bibliography that are now retracted. As readers, we need to identify errors, use critical reading, and post on PubPeer when we find mistakes or errors. And some readers also use the Problematic Paper Screener to post on PubPeer. When we search this expression, fit of clay detector, we have more than 2,000 results, 2,000 reports of problems in the bibliographies. To editors and publishers, I wish they could retract swiftly, a bit quicker. Sometimes it takes more than a year. Screening the incoming flux of manuscript is essential. You cannot send to your reviewers papers that cite retracted papers. We have tools to screen these manuscripts. I worked pro bono with some industry partners like Morressier or STM Integrity Hub in order to transfer these skills to ask them to include in their processing chains a screener for the retracted references or questioned references. I mean, when there are problems mentioned on PubPeer, the editorial board or the reviewers need to know about that, and also the authors who use these references without knowing in most cases. To authors and reviewers, please improve the practices not to produce errors and also not to propagate errors by using a reference, for instance, to a retracted paper. And audit your own manuscripts. So take your Zotero or BibTeX library of all the papers that you cited one day and check if they are retracted or not. You can do that with the Problematic Paper Screener. It's free for all, it's online. Many publishers use it already, and also activists called Sleuth. If you want to know more about this world of scientific decontamination, you can listen to some talks or even read some articles and use the Proactic Paper Screener, contribute. You can also find problems yourself and report them on PubPeer and to the publishers, plural form, in order to take care of the literature and prevent problems to propagate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. That was really, really informative. There is a question for you in the Q&A. So it says, do you plan to add expressions of concern papers which might carry this tag for decades?
Well, there is no technical difficulty in doing that, but what to do when we screen papers that are that use references that have expressions of concerns? It's less immediate than identifying the papers that cite retracted papers. So for now, I'm focusing on the fit of clay with the identification of retracted papers, because it's for sure that there is a problem that is recognized by the publishing industry. And I'm advocating to the publishers in order for them to reassess their catalog. So this is the main work at the moment. And then we'll see for the expressions of concern.
Right, thank you. There is another question. It says, is there a way to use the PPS/fit of clay to screen a list of DOIs, or must it be done one at a time?
No, there is a way to do that. When you go to the PPS, you see the tables here, and I decided not to show the DOIs, not to use this space for an information that wouldn't be useful perhaps to most of the readers. It clutters the screen in a way. You can click here to get to the paper and it's enough. So the DOI is used, of course. But with the Actions menu, you can add a column with the DOI, and then you can use it in the filters to screen for a set of DOIs. So this is something that is doable using only the public interface, and that any user can do. I can provide help if needed, of course. Drop me a mail.
Fantastic, thank you. Is there any other question or comment? It seems like everything was really clear. So thank you once again, Guillaume. Thank you, Martin. For everybody, if you have any questions, remember you can read our documentation anytime and visit our community forum, or just send us an email directly. You can just find this information at crossref.org/contact. And yeah, we'll be happy to see you in the next webinar. Thank you very much. We will be sharing also the recording and the slides in the future, so stay tuned.
Thank you, bye.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.